Well, thanks for joining me for yet another PIPN webinar. Today, I'm going to focus my mind on thoughts and feelings. And it's really good to be back again on this format. We're going to have a little reflection first on the other webinars that have been done in the series. We started with the meaning of pain and the purpose for pain and how that can help us in our perception as we move forward on this journey. We've got habits. There's no point in learning lots of things to do unless we actually put them into our schedule and into our daily routines, weekly routines. So habits are essential. And then we moved on to the body focus of breathing, food and digestion, and then also micronutrients and the role of water, both in our body and on our body and around us in the environment. So next, as I promised, we're going to focus on thoughts and feelings. Now, this is a huge subject. And, the formative webinars that I did in 2009 do dive into subjects like expressive writing, active meditation, not talking about pain, breathing meditation, and also affirmations. And we're going to build on this subject today. Just think back to the early days of when I was married, and I remember getting really frustrated with my feelings and emotions. And I said, what is the point of these feelings? How do you process them? How do you utilize them? And I had no idea at the time. It's been a long journey, and that was over a century ago. A quarter of a century ago. I'm not that old. But yeah, that was something that came up to me in my 20s. And then just about 10 years ago, I was at the Hapkido studio where I was doing martial arts with my friend. And he was going through a troubled time, and you could see it on his face, and you could see it as he was dealing with inner stuff. And he said, what is the point of these feelings? And it was like a challenge for him. And I'm sure we all have experienced it. It's just part of the human journey. So that's why we're dealing with this subject. And it's an integral part of the chronic pain experience. And when we master this and we become increasingly efficient at managing it, then the results are huge on the nervous system and the programming of your brain and nerves. So just to let you know, we're going to look back in time in a minute to where we've come to, and then we're going to talk about what you can do as a take-home message and of a practical application at a deeper level than what I've been sharing already on the PIP website. But first, we're going to think about going forward, because every week I do live streams on Facebook and Instagram on Thursday nights. And I've also got a YouTube channel where I educate on these type of subjects. And also on other newer platforms called Anchor and Medium. These are blog posts as well as short video platforms, which are a great resource. So there's always a continual ongoing in the future source of free education around these complex issues. So as promised, I said I would dive back in our history. Now, if you look at the science of neuroplasticity, the science of how your brain changes, it really has exploded in the last 30 years or so. But we're going to go further back in that, because 100 years ago, there was a gentleman called Emile Coué. He's a Frenchman. He was a pharmacist. He was a psychologist who trained under Labolt. Dr. Labolt was the father of hypnosis in France back in the late 1800s. And Emile Coué learned his knowledge by spending years and years, about 2 decades, under his tutelage in his clinics. And he witnessed that suggesting to patients in a hypnotic state ideas and thoughts that when they awoke from that state and lived their life, they were different. And that fascinated this guy. So he developed his own form of hypnosis, but it was in a wakeful state. And it's called autosuggestion, suggestion to yourself. And his affirmation that he created was, every day in every way, I am getting better and better. Every day in every way, I am getting better and better. And this is something that I've been encouraging my patients to say for years now. You know, traditionally 20 times in the morning, 20 times at night. And that just sets up a train of events in your mind that sets your nerve circuits on a different pathway. Because we're constantly forming new neurons up here. And for those who are maybe challenged by that concept, because maybe you haven't heard it from your MD. Well, you know, I finished medical school in 1995, and the knowledge at that time was you can't change your brain. You know, chronic pain was a static event. It was a disease. Well, you can't really change disease, can you? And that was what we were taught. In fact, there was very little teaching on chronic pain back then. And actually very little has changed in the teaching arenas. But anyway, the power of autosuggestion and affirmations, if you repeat this a lot, and the more you do it, in fact, do it many, many, many more times than 20 in the morning, 20 at night, you literally will accelerate how quickly your neuroplastic brain, how it can be created into different nerve circuits. There's been an estimated 100 billion nerves in the brain, neurons, 100 billion. And each one has got approximately 10,000 connections. That's a quadrillion nerve connections. So it's essential that we create this thing and formulate a new program, not chronic pain, but healing from pain, a journey with pain, from pain, into this reality that I believe is within us called healing state. So that was in the 1920s. Emile Coué in France was teaching his patients and they were getting amazing outcomes. Let's move forward in time. 1949, Professor Walter Cannon from Harvard. He was the most eminent professor of physiology, in my opinion, in the last century. He discovered homeostasis. That's the balance that's needed in the body to survive, whether it be in the cell, the tissue, the system, or the whole organism called the human body. So he discovered this. And he also discovered the fight-flight response, you know, the very thing that chronic pain puts us in. And it's very difficult to get out of because it's a subconscious level of functioning. And we're talking today about thoughts, and we're going to be talking about subconscious thoughts. You know, thoughts that are there. Well, there's a subconscious nature of our being on the nervous system run by the fight-flight response. And it was Walter Cannon that discovered this in the early part of last century when he was working in World War I in Europe. And he was studying trauma. And he went on to discover the physiological basis of trauma and the fight-flight response. In 1949, just before, in fact, it was after his death, there was a published book called The Supersensitivity of Denervation Structures. And this is a copy of his book. I've just got it on paper print here. So this is Walter Cannon and Dr. Rosenbluth, who printed this in 1949. So I came across this book, this article in my training with Chan Gunn in Vancouver. And Chan is an amazing guy. He's got the top prizes for pain in the continent and an order of OBE from the Queen for his contribution to chronic pain. Well, he discovered this book in the archives of medicine and took it to light and formulated his own philosophy and his own treatment modality in Vancouver. And he's trained countless thousands of people across the world in his technique of dry needling and releasing tension by a needle. So, but it was that theory that when you damage a nerve, it becomes super sensitized. And that principle is based on what we now know through epigenetics is the basis of why we get chronic pain, because we all have lives that have got thoughts and feelings attached to them. You know, the science of thoughts is quite interesting. If you do a Google search on how many thoughts you have a day, it ranges anything from 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. It's crazy. And then feelings are not far behind our thoughts. So there's this conglomeration of thoughts and emotions that are happening all the time. And it's not just in our brain, it's in our heart. And I also think it's around us. You know, if you're with somebody that's feeling angry, it's going to affect you. If you're feeling somebody that has love towards you, then you're going to feel it. So it's not just even in our body, it's around us in our electromagnetic field as well. So the epigenetics shows that thoughts and feelings create neuropeptides, which are protein information molecules in the brain, that then go into the blood and around the body, just like your oxygen does and your nutrients do. And they're taken up by the cells and into the cells, the DNA, and the DNA expression of every cell starts to shape our function. So thoughts and feelings from way back in our early life, programmable over time, because these thoughts and feelings will be repetitive. And if they're repetitive, then they actually shape us into our neurology, into our programming, into the faulty system of chronic pain. And that's one of the reasons why chronic pain is so prevalent. Stats anything from a fifth to a third of the population. So epigenetics shows this. And the great work on this is, if that's true, and it is, then we can reprogram our brains and our nervous system into a state of healing. So other formative people over the years, this book changed my life back in the day. Dr. John Sarno, he started his work in the 50s, and he was a rehabilitation specialist who witnessed over 50 years the power of the mind and how you can think differently to get different outcomes. And I'm just going to read actually just the front cover of this. It says, Dr. Sarno says that you should resume physical activity and it won't hurt you, he says. Talk to your brain. Tell it you won't take it anymore, which is very interesting take on neuroplasticity. But you know, Dr. Sarno was the forerunner in our medical world of this. His last book, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, is called The Divided Mind, the epidemic of mind-body disorders. And it's because we don't deal with the body in medicine as a mind-body connection. We have this epidemic problem that looks at lots of different conditions associated with the mind. So that was Dr. Sarno starting in the 50s, right through. He died just a couple of years ago now, but that last book was 2007. He's got numerous books on the subject. As I mentioned, I finished my medical school about 25 years ago, 1995. And it's interesting, 1 year later, this book was published called The Emotional Brain. And I just recently read this by Joseph Ledoux. And it's interesting because the science back then, over 20 years ago, was saying that there's these connections between the limbic system of the hippocampus, that's to do with memory, and the amygdala, which is a part of the brain to do with fight, flight, and fear. And then you've got the cortex, the outer part of the brain, and how it's all related through connections. And the book really talks about the nerve connections and the studies behind that. But we've come so much further in the last 25 years than even that book. And one pivotal book is this, The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, PhD. Dr. Bruce is an epigenetics pioneer. And he was one of the doctors that kind of came forward and wrote this book that will change the path of medicine, in my opinion, as does Deepak Chopra says in the foreword to his book, because it goes over how we can change our brain and the neuroplastic changes that happen. Another one, Greg Braden, he's a social scientist. He's written many books, New York bestsellers, Human by Design. And this book changed my life again when it talked about the coding in the DNA and looking back through time that there's a genetic coding that is wiring us for healing. Now, we know that when we look at our bodies, you know, if you break a bone, it heals. If you cut your skin, it heals. Well, so too with our condition of chronic disease, and chronic pain is one of them. And then the last member of the trio, we call him the trio, is Joe Dispenza. He, again, New York bestseller, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural. It's a very brave subject title, but this book highlights his research on many people, thousands, up to about 8,000 people, MRI scans on their brain as they go through meditative practices, and seeing the changes in the brain function through MRIs, correlating with people leaping forward in time with their healing of chronic pain and other conditions. So these are three main world leaders on this subject. Others, there's David Schechner. Now, this is David's book, The Mind Body Workbook. And he's written a book called Think Away Your Pain. He's a medical doctor that worked with Sarno back about 20 years ago, and he was a student at the time, and he went on to do some research with him. And David has come forward. I've interviewed him on my podcast show, and his book is great, Think Away Your Pain. It's the power of the mind. Another student of Dr. Sarno is Howard Schubiner. His amazing book called Unlearn Your Pain. This is a 28-day process of recovering your body. This is a complex read. It's very deep. I've advised it to some patients. I'm advising somebody right now on this subject. And I've got the privilege of having Dr. Schubiner come on my webinar, my podcast show coming up this month. So again, he's a world leader in the field of mind-body medicine and how do you heal. So I don't want to overwhelm everybody, but I'm just highlighting the path, my journey from back in the day where, you know, I knew people could heal through, say, acupuncture, because I'm certified to do acupuncture. And I know there's possible ways of healing, but until you read other physicians' stories and their experiences, and there's evidence that can, you really take hold of it and run with it. And that's been my journey. And the last one I'll mention, David Hanscom. David's a great guy. He's a recently retired surgeon, had lots of back pain himself, failed back surgeries. He's got several books, but Back in Control and backincontrol.com is his website, the one I teach from. So anyway, that's lots of history. My question to you is, what about you? And as we go forward, we're going to have a question and answer session for those at the live version coming up. My question is, how far have you come? Because I know many of you know a lot of the stuff I talk about, and you're just moving forward in that journey. And that's what it's about. And it does come down to the present moment. You know, your future depends on what you do today, this hour, and this moment. And it's important to plan out your schedule. You know, we need to create habits to make sure that your nervous system gets a rewiring event, a reprogramming, so you have the experience of healing in your nervous system. And I know from my personal experience of walking on this planet, you know, having 3 episodes of chronic pain, I know from my experience from my patients, and also the ingrained belief in myself that it is possible to reduce pain. It's possible to improve your pain status. It's possible to regain your life with a renewed purpose and vigor that can come from that. So I'm going to think about 3 main things to take away today. And one is thoughts. What is your thought about pain? What is your thoughts? They're probably recurrent. And my tip is to write them down. When you write them down, excuse me, that's just my son. Yes? Excuse me. Sorry about that. So your thoughts, write down your thoughts about pain, and you can change them. Change the negative statements to more neutral statements and rewrite it. And every time this happens, write it down. Be responsible. It's really important to be responsible for your thoughts and your beliefs around your pain. And my advice to you, as I said with Emil Coué today, is create a new thought, a positive affirmation. You can use every day in every way. I am getting better and better. Say it 20 times in the morning at yourself in the mirror. Say it 20 times at night at yourself in the mirror. There's something about looking at yourself and saying it that makes it more ingrained. And if you doubt it, say it anyway. And eventually over time, your brain will start to agree with you. And hopefully your belief system will improve. And if you're really struggling with pain, say it all day long. Say it, the more times you can say it, the more results or the quicker results you're going to get. The second area is subconscious thoughts. Now, this is tricky because these thoughts come out of the blue. And sometimes we don't even know where they come from. You know, there may be a belief or a thought from a parent or a caregiver or a teacher. I've heard many stories that come from this. Like, oh, you'll never do anything good in life. You know, age 7. And they're still struggling at age 47 with achieving things in life. We have beliefs in our system that are put there and they're subconscious. The product of our life is often a result of it, but we can't get to the source. So core beliefs are part of our life, whether we like it or not. And one great resource that I've came across recently, and I'm using it with my patients with great benefit, is Lise Bourbeau. So it's LISEBOURBEAU, Lise Bourbeau. And it's your body's telling you, love yourself. And it's a wonderful compilation of years, about 15 years of working with patients and looking at the core beliefs around thoughts and emotions that actually are in people's bodies that are reflecting through certain conditions like low back pain, upper back pain, jaw pain, face pain, fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis. You can go through lots of conditions. And she's got 20,000 cases of backing to her idea, her philosophy, her truths. And she's written down this amazing book. So that may be something you would like to look into. And the third is feelings. So we can split them into negative and positive. You know, I don't really believe in that concept. I believe more there's a lower vibration frequency and a higher vibration. So lower vibration is like deep depression and deep frustration and rage and anger. And the higher vibration of emotion is joy and love and clarity, thought, higher vibration. But if you're struggling with negative thoughts, which is a real issue, my tip is to slow down and stop. Just slow down and stop. Embrace the feeling. They're not going anywhere. Just embrace it. You can reflect on it. Think about it. Ask questions about it. Write about it. Let it be. Just let it be. And I'm going to share the story of Millie. Millie McConnell is a friend of a friend who I've interviewed for my podcast show. And she recovered from terminal cancer many years ago. And her 3 points of philosophy around healing is 1, let go of things you cannot change. You can't change the past, so let it go. Grievances against people and events, let it go. 2, accept the situation, whatever it is. You can't change this moment. It is what it is. Your chronic pain is your chronic pain up to this moment. Accept it. Don't judge it. It's not bad. You don't want it, sure, but it doesn't need to be bad. It can be neutral. It's pain. That's what it is. It's pain. It's your judgment that makes it bad, which actually counteracts your healing journey. You don't want that. Just accept it. And the third thing is tell yourself this is temporary. This is what she tells patients all around the world. She's at national conferences talking about cancer, healing from terminal cancer. And when Millie trained her own brain and her thought process many, many, many times daily, hourly, her body found its way to healing. And I'm a firm believer that that's true for chronic pain. So that's how you deal with negative emotions, frustrations, the anger, maybe the depression, the anxiety, the frustration, the blah feelings. So let's move on. Positive feelings. What do you do with positive feelings? Well, that comes into the language of enjoyment. So split things into three things. The present. Look at the small things in your life. The fact that you can, have a glass of water, a bottle of water. We've got clean water to drink. You can swallow it. Your body absorbs it. There's three things right there. And all you've done is had a glass of water. Many thousands of things to be grateful for in spite of the challenges you're having. So slow down, be present, and be grateful. And enjoy those small things. Past things. There's many things in the past to be grateful for. The journey to now. You would not be the person you are today if it wasn't for the journey. Be grateful for many things in the past. And even though it was a troublesome past, find things that were good and write about them, talk about them, share them. And future things. Look forward to things. What's happening tonight? What's happening tomorrow? What's happening at the weekend? Talk about them. Look forward to them with enjoyment. Because enjoyment is where our heart connects with our brain. And the connection is like fuel on the journey of healing. And the work, the studying at HeartMath clearly shows that. So I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. I look forward to the next one next week, and also the live Q&A that will be coming up very soon when this webinar goes live on the PIP network. Thanks so much and take care.